Hello and welcome to Awaken the Dream. What we're going to be covering today is the axis between Taurus and Scorpio and Aquarius and Leo. So we're out of eclipse season. Mercury is finally out of the shadow phase. We are currently in this really powerful, inspiring connection between Jupiter, Jupiter being on the North Node, and we have a full moon coming up. I think that is 13 degrees. Yes, it is 13 degrees of Sagittarius. So sun will be at 13 Gemini and moon will be at 13 Sagittarius. The planetary, you could say planetary ruler, or the planetary force that is most co-respondent with Jupiter is with Sagittarius. The planet most co-respondent with Sagittarius is Jupiter, and Jupiter will be on the North Node when we have the full moon. So the month is looking very, I would say, easier than May. Definitely more. I don't want to say non-eventful because there are so many powerful events coming up, but they seem more, maybe the word would be beneficent. So the point of this video today is not so much to cover astrology, but more so to share a practice that is very helpful for working with strong emotional energy. Now that at any time of any phase of whatever cycle we're in, that is always going to be important. What's coming to mind is Brother Keone when he talks about Aloha Ma and the 54 different emotional states that humanity is here to experience and fully have it move through us in ways that are bringing us into a state of, how does he call this? I can remember the meaning of Aloha Ma. Oh, it's right there on the tip of my tongue. But basically this bigger love that is self-reflective love. That's the Aloha Ma. I haven't tuned into Brother Keone in a very long time, but that is something that we're going to constantly be working through, and our emotional energy gets harvested in certain ways, like to get a rise out of us when we have that big energy and we don't know what to do with it. One, because we are never taught what to do with that emotional energy. We become self-destructive or avoidant or unwell. Like our body is an actual river. I read this, I'm reading a book right now about lymph, and what the author was saying is that because we need water, because we are a whole ocean unto ourselves, a cosmos, an ocean, the earth, everything that we know of is within our bodies. We're like a fish out of water, but he said that we don't need to be out of water because our lymph is actually the ocean. So we carry the ocean within our lymph, the vessels of our lymph. So when we become stagnant and that emotional energy isn't flowing and we become more like a swamp or a, what's the other word when you need to plunge? It's like a sewage. This is not a state of health. You can see it in the skin. You can see it in the skin is the way that I will mostly say you can see it, because the lymph is actually just right below the surface of the skin. And when we are clogged up, our skin is clogged up. We feel a variety of different things that we can feel. But ultimately, this being able to work with our emotions is so powerful and so important. Okay, so also the reason I talked about the polarity between Taurus and Scorpio is the last little bit of astrology before we get into some practices. And Leo and Aquarius is because we have been in this astrological configuration with the North and South node at I want to say near the end of what they're going to be in Taurus Scorpio. They're at 3 degrees right now of Taurus and Scorpio. The North Node being, there's so many ways of thinking about the North Node. One of the ways from Jyotish, which is Indian astrology, is that it has to do with greed and being driven by the part of us that wants to improve ourselves and be better and have more and look better and all of that, the head of the dragon. And in other traditions, they say that that North Node is where we're going. It's the trajectory that we're headed toward. And the South Node from the Jyotish saying that the South is the tail of the dragon. And this has to do with our karmic patterning, conditioning, the really being in the body and having like the instincts of, you know, I don't want to say taking over, but it's a thing between the two. Which one is going to be leading the dragon? And then from the, you know, the other perspectives, more so from West astrology, which who knows, that's like a big whole topic of like, where did astrology actually come from? And anyway, the astrology that I feel today is a big blob of just taken from all sorts of different cultures. That the South Node is going to be where we're coming from, the past, and it has to do with our habits, patterns, addictions, same thing as the Jyotish meaning, that from my current understanding. And like I said, there's so much information, so many different cultures have used, actually created, and you know, where was this first downloaded from, and where, you know, the first cave paintings and the first stone temple sites that were, you know, aligned with certain constellations and to catch the equinoxes and the solstices. So what I want, this little segment is just to clarify that astrology has been taken from many cultures, and what we have today in my reality bubble from being a student from many different teachers, that we have a lot of different resources for where this stuff comes from. And in my current understanding today, I work mostly with those two that I'm mentioning, from Jyotish, and then from, or what most people incorrectly call Vedic astrology, with the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. Today, the dragon's head, or the North Node, would be at 3 degrees of Taurus. Jupiter is also at 3 degrees of Taurus. And then the dragon's tail, which has to do with the past, karmic patterning, conditioning, is at 3 degrees Scorpio. Now, the nodal axis moves backwards. So it's going to be 3, 2, 1, 0, 3, 2, 1, 29, rather 3, 2, 1, and then we'll be at 29 degrees of Aries and Libra. So as we're at these final moments of the nodal axis going through Taurus and Scorpio, this is like the culmination of the last 18 months. Everything that we have been learning, all the transits, the eclipses that have been happening through Taurus and Scorpio. So it is like the pressure is on to finalize, to take everything that we've learned and actually implement and put it into action. And the closer that we get to that 0 degree point, and then when we get to the 29 degree point, Pluto is at a 90 degree angle to the North Node and the South Node. So this is where I feel drawn to share some practices about working with your emotions, because Pluto is definitely the ultimate as far as bringing up what is below the surface. I think of this as below the belly button, that place where in Tantra Yoga is called the Khanda, which is the root bulb. And this is where we feel so much like we got butterflies, or we have we're turned on or we're turned off, or we, whatever, all this emotional energy that comes from the pelvic area. This is Pluto's realm. And this is also where our creative energy to create life, to create art, to create beauty, to create abundance, it all comes from that pelvic movement, that energy in the pelvis. Pluto being connected deeply with that part of our physical bodies, but from a transpersonal kind of way, because Pluto being beyond the rings of Saturn, those planets beyond the rings of Saturn, I feel like they're optional for our embodied experience. Some people may not really feel connected to those planets. For those of us who do feel connected with that, it is a big energy that it adds to our experience of embodiment. Okay, so now you can see, well, I can see it in my mind anyway, that the polarity between Taurus and Scorpio now being at a 90-degree angle to Pluto, we're getting this tension on both ends of where we're going. And I do consider, like, I felt it in myself because I have been very motivated for my work. And then, I'm like, well, the dragon's head and greed, and how is what I'm doing, could it be connected with a sense of for myself and the greed of wanting to do better, create more, be better, look better, feel better. And it's there. It's definitely part of me doing more of my creative work. So the North Node, where we're going, it does seem to, in my experience today, it does seem to require that we have some mind, some state of mind that is wanting to go get something more and better. And it's just, needing to question, like, is it all for me? Is it, and then is that wrong? Is it, and how is it balanced with my body or the tale of my past and where I've been and where I've come from and my karmic patterning and conditioning. So we're constantly working that pole. When the pole is in Scorpio Taurus, it has more specific connection to Taurus being finance, resources, love, our intimacy with the earth. That is like, how will I connect deeply with this soil and the plants and seeds and be able to create more abundance? And the South Node, which has to do in Scorpio. And then when I'm creating that abundance, some things will die, some things will go back into the earth. What do I do when there's other critters coming to eat food from my garden? Am I going to kick them out or make traps for them so they can't eat? Or am I finding a way for us to live together where they're also aerating my soil, eating grubs, and I'm planting certain things just for them? So you see what I'm saying about that polarity? It's like, do I get stuck in it's all for me with the dragon's head in Taurus? Or am I able to find a way to live also with the Scorpio side, which has to do with the dying off, has to do with composting, has to do with being able to let go. And in a larger sense, Scorpio South Node has a lot to do with, well, Scorpio is connected to other people's resources, our inheritance from our ancestors and from other. It has to do with our relationships, of things that we inherit through relationships. Like, that was my mom, that was my grandma, that was my uncle. And they left me these things, whether it's money, property, or land, or habits and patterns and addictions that I get from them. So that's the South Node. Now, you can obviously see the Leo Aquarius axis because Pluto is in Aquarius. As planets have been making their transition into Leo, we had Mars recently, we're going to have Venus in a couple of days making an opposition to Pluto. So you could see there's what we call this a T-square. Is that a T-square? Yeah, the T-square. Opposition. Yeah. So you can see there's an opposing. Pluto's going to be opposing. It just finished opposing Mars. It's going to be opposing Venus in a couple of days. So there's that opposition. And then there's this other opposition on the nodal axis, and Pluto is making a square both ends of that. Jupiter is also there on the north. So Pluto is making that square angle to Jupiter. 90-degree are the energy of Mars. It's a martial energy. It's dynamic and it is causing friction. That friction is meant to, I always think of, because my trade forever and for my whole life is going to be body work, like manually moving tissue in the body. And my idea of the 90-degree angle, I think about a knee being bent at a 90-degree angle for too long. And it's like you feel that as an inflammation and it's irritating and it causes you to need to take action. Maybe the action is that you just lay down and straighten the leg out, or maybe the action is that you have to do something to relieve the inflammation and to relieve the pain that's being caused. So that 90-degree angle between Pluto and the nodal is asking us to find some way to regenerate, resurrect old things from the South Node Taurus, South Node Scorpio, resurrect some of the things that are latent gifts that we have that we either forgot about or we haven't yet tapped into, to release, to give it, to clean ourselves. I literally went in I made this really beautiful rose, amber, coconut oil, incense, myrrh, crumbly stuff, like a scrub, and some salt, some red sea salt. And then I just caked it all over my entire body and was like, cleansing, rinsed it off. And it's like a literal, like, just cleansing. And also what I'm seeing with this is like, what is it that we can give? So through that, me doing this cleansing and then reading some things from the Telegram group that I'm a part of, I feel, I have something I want to share today. And we all have something that we want to share. Pluto squaring the South Node in Scorpio is a resurrection of your innate talents and gifts, things that you have by inheritance. You may not have went to a university and got some degree about this certain topic, whatever it is for you, but Pluto being square that is like, you need to give this back. You need to give it to somebody. You have exactly what somebody needs. And so there's this urgency to take the action it's a relief for yourself too. The more you're able to give what you are gifted with, the more space that you have for this divine dance of creativity. Going over to Jupiter on the North Node, there's something new that wants to come in. There's some new wisdom that you have from the last 18 months in particular that is ready to grow, to be expanded and light you up and light up your world in a new way. You have to do both ends though. You can't just do one or the other. It doesn't work that way. Okay, so we have that resurrection of some of your gifts and some bringing it back to life. And we have some things just need to get washed back into the soil. That salt and the rose petals and all of the things that were on my body just needed to go back into the soil. And whatever else was on me also, there's some things that are just ready to be digested and composted. And there's some things that need to be given away to somebody else. Okay, so Pluto is a main focus right now because it's what's holding all of this dynamic 90 degrees and opposition together. Pluto is the steady force that's holding all that together. And I believe it's June 11th, Pluto is going to go retrograde and will be re-entering Capricorn to do some finalization work on this deconstruction of the systems of domination and control, the systems that were previously held by our ancestors, that circle of grandmothers who were the wisdom keepers, who set the structure, who set the tone for how our societies and our cultures would be cultivated. Cultivated is a word we're going to look at when we get into this practice. So as we're in this phase during June and July, and Pluto will be in Capricorn all the way until January of 2024, and then it'll go back into Aquarius, I believe, until September of 2024, and then I think it retrogrades again for a little spell. And then I think it's January 2025 that we see Pluto enter Aquarius for 20 years. So this area of Aquarius is a prime, a big important topic for all of us right now. And for you, you want to just look at your chart, see what house that is, what planets that you have within that first 0 to 5, you can say 0 to 3, 0 to 5 degrees. That whatever planet that you have there is going to be the main focus of what is being transformed, regenerated, resurrected, composted. It's a huge change for you personally in your life and for all of us in the whole entire, on the earth. Okay, so let's start getting into the practice. So when you have this big emotions, and big emotions can be when it's joy or ecstasy that's so big that you kind of leave your body for a moment. Ecstasy, trauma also can take you into an out of body. You don't really ever leave your body, but when the emotion is so big, you forget yourself. That in itself is not a bad thing. That in itself is not a bad thing, because what do we forget when we forget ourselves? We get totally present. We get totally one-pointed awareness, focus on whatever that thing is. And I can list so many times from both the trauma and the ecstasy that the whole world disappears except for that one thing. That in itself is not bad. The thing that is troublesome is working with the emotional energy of the act of whatever the thing is, whatever the topic. It can be, I'm just gonna name something totally not triggery. I killed a plant to get the root. And I had this moment of like agony of like, what did I do? Why? I could have just bought some of this root dried. Why did I have? And I had this like big, which triggered all these other times that I did something that I was regretting or I felt ashamed of. And I was able to sit with myself for a moment. And I know this might sound silly to some people, but take the example of when you've had something like that, something where there was another bigger emotion triggered that kind of has a domino or like a thread of a connection to some other bigger topic that we may not be ready to touch yet, and that's okay. So this practice that I'm going to give today, first thing I want you to know, you can Google it. My teacher's name is Christopher Wallace, Harish Wallace, and the practice is called Tattva Bhavana. Tattva means it's the elements, earth, air, and it has to do with what we are made of, our material, the matter that we are built out of. Bhavana is, there was a little girl I remember in India named Bhavana. She was really beautiful. And the name itself is just so beautiful. It means like a contemplation or a cultivation. The way Harish talks about this is a meditation on reality. So bhavana having to do with this moment of sitting with what is. So before starting this practice, you want to do whatever it is that you do, because there are practices. There are many, many practices. And what I love, Lauren, she's part of our group in the it's called Cosmic Literacy Telegram group. Something that she had mentioned was like in a post that she gave was like, I don't want to do practices that some ancient practice. I want to do this practice of being in my body. And it was really beautiful. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I also, not to put any, yes, 100% to that. Be with your body and allow your body to move. Definitely tune into Lauren. I absolutely adore everything that Lauren does. I actually cried talking to her, telling her about, what she and her practices, and just her voice and her teachings. It's so powerful and so beautiful. Definitely tune into Lauren. And also with this Tattva Bhavana, okay, there is so much richness in something that has proven itself to be a valuable tool. I mentioned also in the Telegram group today that I lived in a Vedanta ashram for 2 years. And when I came back out into the real world and I had my first real world drama, I contacted one of my teachers, and he was a senior person in the organization, and he said, oh, do your practices. And I was like, they're not working. And something that Harish said, since I've been tuning into him since 2013, is that if your practices don't hold up in real life situations, they are not worth their weight. So everything about Tantra Yoga has been worth its weight. The practices have proven to be beneficial. They have, thousands of years of practice, and they've proven to be helpful. So whatever, okay, that the practice that gets you into a meditative state, whatever you do to get into that point of stillness, do that, because there's so many ways. Okay, so you want to do this Tattva Bhavana practice, you need to first cultivate a sense of stillness. Once you have that, the next thing you're going to do is don't try to change anything. You don't try to manipulate the environment, shutting off the sounds that are around you. You don't want to do anything changing your breath or thinking of some certain thing that is you don't want to change what is. Do you understand? After you've made sure that you haven't changed anything in your environment, you are going to sit with yourself just as you are, the lighting just as it is, your breath just as it is, and just notice how you feel. What is there? Notice how the breath is going. Notice how you feel in your belly and your legs. So the tattvas. So you're going to look at the, you just kind of go over the elements, my breathing, the air, the fire. So my heart and my digestion. You can take it like that, like, oh, how is my belly feeling? How is my heart feeling? How, just notice it without trying to change it. The next thing you're going to do is, now that you've taken awareness of yourself and just noticing how you are, what's, noticing what is, noticing the sounds, noticing all of that. The next thing you're going to do is take away the, how can we call this? Giving equal attention to all these different aspects. So if you're having a big feeling, giving equal attention. So attention is going to be like your mental process of thinking about something. Because in this practice, we don't also try to stop thinking. There are a lot of meditative practices where we do kind of, there's a thought that we're going to stop thinking, which is in of itself a thought that, we can really stop thinking. Although you've probably experienced a time that you have stopped thinking, and that's usually a traumatic experience or in an ecstatic experience. Sometimes in meditation, or if you are a regular, strong meditator, you may experience those more often, those moments of not thinking. And they're amazing and blissful, especially when it's not associated with something happening that brought you into a moment of forgetting yourself. So you want to give equal attention to all these different aspects: the lawnmower that's running outside, my son running the bathwater, washing the dog, my fear about this thing that I have going on, my belly being a little full and a little bloated, giving equal attention to all of these different things. So you see, usually when we're having a big emotional surge, all of our attention gets shunted to something. And in this practice, what we're going to do, let me just recap. You're going to get into a state first. If you listen to any of my videos, I always will, well, maybe not so much. I don't know if everybody has access to those, but if you've ever had a reading with me, I always start the reading with a grounding practice where you're basically just imagining the crown of your head and the base of your spine opening up, and you're going to do a breathing practice to inhale and to, the lunar inhalation coming down into the diaphragm, the solar exhalation raising up and coming out through the nose, and getting, grounding your tailbone into the place you're sitting, whatever it is that you do to get yourself centered. And then you're going to not change anything. You're going to allow everything to be exactly as it is. Then you're going to give equal attention to all the different layers of what's happening in your body. Those three things alone, I feel like that's a lot. And it's not necessarily easy to do, because there'll be one thing that's like, when I was in emergency medicine, was an ER, what do you call this? EMT. There's this triage process, right? So the one who's like screaming the loudest is usually the one who does not need immediate attention. They usually have like their toe sliced up or something, but they're very vocal about it. And there's somebody else who their airway is blocked and they are not screaming. And they are actually the ones who need attention first. So this part 3 of this practice, we're giving equal attention to all parts. I want you to remember that like a triage kind of situation where you're like, there's something else going on that that's not screaming because their toe isn't broken. There's something else that has a restricted airway. And so you want to really bring yourself into a place of like giving equal attention to all the different aspects of what you have going on in that given moment of you practicing your bhavana practice. Another thing is to not think that there's a way to do it right or to do it wrong, that you are allowing this process to happen and to reveal what is ready to be revealed. So again, thinking about the triage situation and the person who has a restricted airway and they're not yelling for attention, that this is where our intuition comes in. And there's this, it's not only intuition, it's like our ability to be aware of more than what we are used to being aware of, that more can arise in our awareness when we open the field of perception wider. So while you're doing this practice, you can know that, first of all, that there is more that you just maybe haven't placed your awareness on yet. So one of the things that helps me a lot when I get in these emotional bouts of like, I don't know what you would call it, like it's a big firecracker energy and there's this emotional surge. Something that helps me a lot is to notice what I am paying attention to. Oh, and I have so many examples with one certain person that I'm constantly getting stimulated by. And I notice that I'm like, why am I so focused on this one thing that the person said, when there's like infinite amounts of other ways that I could have read the thing. There's infinite amounts of other things going on that my attention can be placed upon. Why is it that I have gotten so focused in on this one thing, and the way that my current level of understanding is processing that one thing? My mind is getting all worked up and getting all crazy. And when my mind does that, then I'm like starting to get kind of crazy too. So this practice really allows you to, the way it looks is like this field of awareness, that we're sitting in a field of awareness. And I'm noticing my breath. I'm noticing this heat rising from my chest. You could call this the fire in my belly. I'm noticing the water in my pelvis. I'm noticing this like staticky energy around my body, which you might call that, whatever you call it, your auric field or your whatever. So I'm noticing all these things, and I'm giving them equal attention as I'm giving the thoughts in my mind. Now, that field of awareness, it's like all of those senses, all of those elements that are making me up, kind of fall back into the ground of awareness. And they all have an equal weight. And of course, I've been practicing, like I said, since 2013. I first met this particular teacher, and then I have another teacher named Chris Tompkins. These two are phenomenal Tantra yoga teachers. I highly recommend hooking up with their teachings, reading Chris. Chris has a lot of books. That's why I keep calling Hadish Wallace. Not a lot, I think there's two, and maybe he's working on a third one, but lots of material. And that's just their little shout out right there. So the practices are a lot easier for me because I've been doing them for so long. Now, when the thing is really up, I think last week, the thing was really up. It was so hard. I cried. I went for a run. I cried, but it usually would take me out for like a week. But last week it was fully fledged. And it was a good 3 hours, maybe 4 hours that I was in it. And then it was finished. I went out about my day. I went on a first date. I had a great time. And it was totally fine. So the practices, what I'm saying that for is that the first time you do this, it might not be like that. Like, I don't know if you could feel the energy change when I just brought my awareness into that, what I called the ground of awareness. And I pulled out these different elements of myself, let them have an equal weight, bringing equal importance. And then they all just kind of fall down to the ground. And I'm completely settled. That is years of practice. So don't be discouraged if you go into this practice and it doesn't work like that for you. Don't be discouraged, but practice. Keep practicing. If you have any questions about what I've shared today, please feel free to contact me and ask some questions, and I will do my best to clarify. I hope this has been helpful. I hope that you find it to be beneficial, and believe so much more of these micro meditations that you can do in your actual life that will actually change your consciousness, and they will eventually get you into a place of being with reality in a different way than what you're used to being. So thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you again very soon.